My children decided I was too fragile to live alone after a minor fall, systematically stripping me of my independence, finances, and cherished belongings, even trying to force me into an assisted living facility. In response, I meticulously gathered evidence of their emotional and financial abuse, and with legal help, asserted my autonomy, ultimately obtaining a restraining order to reclaim my life and home. Have you ever faced a similar challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more real-life stories. My life had always been one of quiet competence. 72 years had taught me resilience, independence, and the quiet satisfaction of a well-ordered existence. My small, charming cottage nestled on a tree-lined street was my sanctuary, a testament to a life built with care, filled with memories of my late husband, Arthur, and the laughter of our children, Daniel and Jessica, when they were still innocent of the world's sharper edges. I tended my rose garden, volunteered at the local library, and cherished my weekly bridge game with friends, a lively gathering of women who understood the nuances of a good hand and the comfort of shared laughter. Then came the afternoon of the loose rug. It was nothing dramatic, just a misplaced Persian runner in the hallway, a momentary lapse in my otherwise meticulous habits. My foot caught, I stumbled, and before I knew it, I was on the polished hardwood floor, more surprised than hurt. A jarring thud, a sharp pain in my hip, and then a breathless moment of stillness. I lay there, assessing, realizing quickly it wasn't a broken bone, just a deeply bruised ego and a rather sore hip that throbbed with a dull ache. The ornate grandfather clock in the living room chimed a leisurely 3 o'clock, its gentle tick-tock a stark contrast to the sudden jolt of my fall. My neighbor, Margaret, whose porch light was a beacon I could see from my kitchen window, happened to be passing by, taking her beloved terrier, Buster, for his afternoon walk. Buster, a curious and nosy little creature, had paused at my gate, sniffing intently at my prize-winning petunias, when Margaret caught a glimpse of me through the large bay window of my living room. She saw my descent, a blur of floral print and flailing limbs, and her face immediately creased with concern. "Eleanor, oh my goodness, are you all right?" she cried, her voice a piercing alarm that made Buster yelp in surprise. She rushed to my side, her usually jovial demeanor replaced by a mask of genuine worry. "I saw you fall, did you hit your head? Are you in pain?" She rattled off questions, her hand hovering, unsure where to offer support. With a little effort and a significant amount of pride, I managed to push myself up onto my hands and knees. Then slowly, using an antique side table for leverage, I rose to my feet. A wave of dizziness passed, but I steadied myself. My hip protested with a dull throb, but I was undeniably mobile. "Just a clumsy moment, dear, nothing to fret about," I said, attempting a reassuring smile, though my lips felt a little stiff. I even managed a slight, dismissive wave of my hand, a gesture of "nothing to see here, move along." But Margaret, bless her well-meaning heart, was already reaching for her phone. "Nonsense, Eleanor, you took quite a tumble. I'm calling Daniel and Jessica, they need to know." Before I could protest, she was already speaking into the phone, her voice hushed and urgent. "Daniel, yes, it's Margaret. Listen, Eleanor just had a bad fall. No, I don't think anything's broken, but she's quite shaken. I really think you should come over." Within an hour, my son, Daniel, and my daughter, Jessica, arrived, their SUV pulling into my gravel driveway with a decisive crunch. Their faces were etched with a peculiar blend of genuine worry and something else, a flicker of opportunity, perhaps. It was a subtle shift in their expressions, a sharpening of their focus that sent a prickle of unease down my spine. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, immediately started assessing the situation with an almost clinical detachment. He walked around me, scrutinizing my movements, his brow furrowed. "Mom, are you absolutely sure you're okay? Margaret said you took quite a tumble. Maybe we should go to the emergency room, just to be safe. We could get an ambulance if you like." He even reached out to touch my hip, a gesture that felt less like comfort and more like an inspection. Jessica, the more emotionally expressive of the two, rushed to hug me, her embrace surprisingly tight, almost suffocating. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Oh, Mom," my heart stopped when Margaret called. "This house is so old, those rugs are a menace. And those stairs, are you sure you can manage all this alone? What if you fall again when no one's around? We'd be worried sick." Her eyes, usually so bright, seemed to well up with tears that felt a little too theatrical, a little too quickly summoned. I tried to reassure them, repeating my diagnosis, a bruised hip, nothing more. "Honestly, I'm perfectly fine. A bit sore perhaps, but I can walk, I can move. It's just a silly fall." These things happen to everyone, young or old. I even demonstrated a tentative squat which, though slightly uncomfortable, clearly proved my mobility. I walked around the living room, picking up a misplaced book, then settling back into my favorite armchair. See, I'm quite all right. But their gazes exchanged a knowing glance, a silent communication that seemed to disregard my words entirely. They exchanged a look that spoke volumes, a look that said, "She's not admitting it, but we know better." It was in that moment, as they bustled around me, calling doctors against my protests, of course, they simply ignored my objections with a polite but firm smile, and discussing what-ifs with an alarming urgency, that the first tendrils of fear began to coil in my stomach. It wasn't about the fall itself, which was a minor inconvenience, but about the ominous implications they were drawing from it. The doctor, a young man named Dr. Alex Chen, who barely looked old enough to shave, let alone practice medicine, confirmed what I already knew. A bad bruise, some soft tissue damage but no fractures. He prescribed rest and mild painkillers. "You're lucky, Aliner," he said, giving a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Could have been much worse. Just take it easy for a few days, and try to avoid stairs if you can." I nodded, relieved that I had been right all along. My children, however, heard a different message entirely. They clung to the phrase, "take it easy," like a lifeline, twisting it to suit their own burgeoning narrative. "See, Mom," Daniel said, his voice firm, almost triumphant, as if he'd won an argument. "The doctor said you need to take it easy. This means you can't be doing everything you used to. No more gardening, no more climbing ladders to change light bulbs, no more dusting the high shelves." Jessica chimed in, her tone grave, and living alone. "It's just not safe anymore, Mom. What if you fall again and no one's around? We'd be worried sick, truly. We wouldn't be able to sleep at night." That evening they stayed. They hovered, cooked a bland chicken and vegetable soup, devoid of the vibrant flavors I usually enjoyed, and meticulously went through my mail, ostensibly to help, but really to scrutinize every envelope, every bill, every piece of correspondence. They rearranged my medications, leaving behind a calendar marked with precise dosages and times, as if I were a child incapable of remembering to take my daily vitamin. I found myself biting my tongue, the words of protest dying unspoken. It felt like being caught in a net, slowly but surely tightening around me, each gentle tug pulling me further into their control. Daniel brought up options for my future, subtly hinting at assisted living facilities with a casualness that chilled me to the bone. "They have nurses on staff, Mom, all your meals prepared, activities like bingo and craft classes. You wouldn't have to worry about anything," Jessica added, with a sigh that sounded more put upon than empathetic, "and we wouldn't have to worry about you. Think of our peace of mind, Mom. We just want you to be safe and comfortable." Safe and comfortable. Their words, intended to soothe, felt like shackles, each syllable a link in a chain. My home, my sanctuary, suddenly seemed to shrink around me, no longer a haven but a potential trap. The bruise on my hip faded, leaving behind only a faint yellow mark, but a deeper ache, a new kind of pain, began to settle in my heart. It was the crushing weight of their care, a smothering embrace that threatened to squeeze the very life and independence out of me. I watched them as they spoke, their faces earnest, their intentions seemingly benign, yet I felt a growing sense of profound unease. This wasn't about my well-being, it was about their control. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this small fall was just the beginning of a much larger, more significant battle for my life. The quiet competence of my past was about to be tested in a way I had never imagined. The days that followed my recovery were less about healing and more about a slow, systematic dismantling of my autonomy. My hip bruise, which had quickly turned a mottled purple and then a fading yellow, was visibly disappearing, and my limp disappeared entirely within a week. I was back to my daily walks, albeit a bit more cautious on uneven pavement, and my rose garden beckoned with the promise of spring blossoms, already showing their vibrant pink buds. Yet my children, Daniel and Jessica, acted as if I were still bedridden, frail, and utterly incapable of making a cup of tea, let alone managing my own life. They became my constant, unwelcome shadows, their presence a suffocating blanket. Jessica, the more outwardly affectionate but no less insidious, would arrive every morning, promptly at 8, with an armful of pre-prepared bland meals. She'd bustle into my kitchen, her cheerful greetings masking an underlying agenda. "Mom, you shouldn't be cooking. The doctor said rest. You need to conserve your energy," she'd cheer up, her voice overly sweet, as she gently but firmly removed the spatula from my hand just as I attempted to scramble an egg. She'd then proceed to scrutinize my refrigerator, clucking about expired items and unhealthy choices, despite my meticulous habit of keeping my fridge spotless and stocked with fresh, wholesome ingredients. And honestly, Mom, she'd add with a sigh of mock exasperation, do you really need all these exotic spices? It just makes things so much more complicated, and too much flavor can upset your stomach. Complicated for whom? I wanted to retort, but the words stuck in my throat, choked by the sheer audacity of her implied criticism. My culinary independence, a source of quiet joy, was now under their purview. Daniel, ever the one for practical matters and financial control, tackled my accounts with alarming efficiency. He set up online bill pay, ostensibly to make things easier for me. No more writing checks, Mom. This way, everything's automated. So much less hassle for you, and we can make sure everything is paid on time. While I recognized the technological convenience, I soon realized less hassle for me translated directly to more control for him. He started questioning every expenditure, no matter how small or insignificant. Mom, why did you buy a new hardcover book? Don't you have plenty to read from the library? And this donation to the local animal shelter? Are you sure you can afford it right now with, potential future needs? My lifelong habits of generosity, nurtured by my late husband Arthur, and my intellectual curiosity were suddenly subject to his meticulous, disapproving approval. He even subtly hinted at power of attorney forms. Just in case, Mom. It's really for your own protection in case anything untoward happens. My social life became another casualty in their campaign. My weekly bridge game, a cherished ritual for decades, was suddenly deemed too strenuous. Mom, isn't it a bit much to host all those ladies? The noise, the concentration, it must be exhausting for you now. Why don't you just let us take you out for a nice, quiet lunch instead? Jessica would suggest, her voice dripping with false concern, conveniently ignoring that the mental stimulation of bridge kept my mind sharp. When my dear friend Betty called to invite me for coffee, Jessica often answered the phone, speaking in hushed, overly dramatic tones. Oh, Betty, Eleanor's still not quite herself after the fall. She's resting. I'll tell her you called, but I really don't think she's up to visitors. She'd then turn to me, offering a saccharine smile. Betty understands, Mom. She just wants you to get well. I felt a growing sense of isolation, watching my connections fray, my independence erode, meticulously severed by their care. The whispers began subtly. A hushed phone call Daniel took in the hallway, his voice lowered to an almost inaudible murmur. A fleeting, significant glance exchanged between him and Jessica when I offered an opinion on current events, followed by a patronizing pat on my arm. That's sweet, Mom. You're always so invested in the news. It was a constant, insidious undermining of my intelligence, my judgment, my very identity. My clumsiness from the fall was now cited as a general decline, my forgetfulness exaggerated from misplaced keys to a supposed inability to manage my own affairs, my memory once sharp as a tack, now painted as unreliable. One afternoon, I overheard Daniel on the phone with what sounded suspiciously like a real estate agent. His voice was careful, low, but I caught snippets. Yes, it's a lovely property, great bones, classic architecture, but definitely needs some updates to really maximize value. And location, location, location. We're thinking a quick sale would be best given the circumstances. My blood ran cold. The circumstances? Was he talking about my house? The house Arthur and I had bought together, where we had raised our children, where every nook and cranny held a cherished memory. I confronted him later that day, my voice tight with suppressed anger, trying to keep my composure. Daniel, who were you talking to on the phone earlier? And what circumstances were you referring to that necessitate a quick sale of a property? He didn't even flinch, offering a practiced, casual shrug, a disarming smile playing on his lips. Oh, just a general inquiry, Mom, about property values in the neighborhood. Just keeping an eye on things. With the market the way it is, it's smart to be aware of your assets. Nothing to worry your pretty little head about. Jessica, ever the accomplice, chimed in, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. And Mom, honestly, this house is a lot for one person. All those stairs. All that yard work, especially with your hip. We just worry about you living alone in such a large, old place. But worry wasn't what I heard. I heard the grinding gears of a plan slowly but surely turning. They started bringing brochures for active senior living communities. Glossy pamphlets depicting smiling, vibrant elderly people playing bingo and doing water aerobics. A life that felt utterly alien to my own, a picture of forced cheerfulness I found deeply unsettling. They'd leave them strategically placed on my coffee table next to my favorite knitting basket, as if to say, "This is your future." "Look, Mom," Jessica would say, pointing to a photo of a meticulously manicured lawn and a communal dining room. "No more mowing, no more leaky faucets, everything taken care of for you, like a resort." "But I like mowing my lawn," I retorted, my voice sharper than I intended, a rare flash of my old fire. "And I like calling my own plumber when a faucet leaks. It's part of my life, it's my independence." Daniel would sigh, his patience clearly wearing thin, his facade of concern cracking ever so slightly. "Mom, you're not getting any younger. We're just trying to be proactive. We don't want you to be a burden on anyone, especially not on us." Burden, the word hung in the air, thick and heavy like a shroud. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about their convenience, their peace of mind, their perceived responsibility, neatly packaged into a narrative of my inevitable decline. The walls of their care were closing in, brick by suffocating brick, and I felt suffocated, trapped within my own home, a prisoner in my own life. I knew then that I had to fight, not just for my freedom, but for my very identity, for the right to choose my own path. The quiet competence of my past was about to become a weapon in a battle for my future. The brochures on my coffee table multiplied. Each day, a new one appeared, carefully placed, sometimes open to a highlighted section about personalized care plans or convenient medical access. They were subtle, yes, but insistent, a constant visual reminder of their insidious agenda, like vultures circling. My children, Daniel and Jessica, had refined their tactics. The overt suggestions became softer, cloaked in layers of feigned concern and exasperated sighs. They were masters of the gentle push, the subtle nudge, the persuasive insinuation that I was simply too frail to make my own decisions. "Mom, remember how you always loved painting? Imagine a place where you have a dedicated art studio and classes right there. No need to drive or clean up. It's so much easier," Jessica would say, her voice honeyed and persuasive, pointing to a picture of a sunlit room filled with easels and smiling, gray-haired artists. I'd nod noncommittally, my gaze fixed on my own paint-splattered apron hanging by the kitchen door. My little studio, tucked away in the sunroom, might not have been grand, but it was mine. It held the echoes of my brushstrokes, the scent of linseed oil, and the quiet joy of creation. It held me. It held the memories of Arthur watching me paint, his approving smile a constant presence. Daniel, ever the more direct and financially motivated, started discussing my assets more openly, framing them as burdensome responsibilities. "Mom, have you thought about the rising costs of home maintenance? Property taxes, insurance, utilities, it's all going up, and it's a lot for a fixed income. An assisted living facility, while seemingly expensive upfront, often ends up being more cost-effective in the long run. All-inclusive, remember. No more worrying about leaky roofs or escalating heating bills." He'd lay out meticulously prepared spreadsheets, highlighting hypothetical expenditures, painting a picture of my cottage as a financial drain, a monstrous burden that would eventually bankrupt me. He never mentioned the substantial equity, the immense value tied up in the house, a value I knew they coveted, seeing it as their imminent inheritance. My friends, once frequent visitors and companions, became increasingly distant. When I called Betty, my bridge partner of 20 years, for our usual Wednesday game, she sounded flustered and evasive. "Oh, Alina, I'm so sorry, I have a prior engagement. A doctor's appointment I completely forgot about. Maybe next week." Her voice was laced with an awkwardness I immediately recognized from Jessica's earlier phone calls. It was clear now. My children were intercepting my calls, screening my visitors, creating a narrative of my fragility and impending senility that justified their increasing control. They were isolating me, slowly but surely severing my connections to the outside world, making me utterly dependent on them for all social interaction and external information. One afternoon, a social worker named Brenda Peterson arrived at my door, unannounced and uninvited. She was a stern-faced woman with a clipboard and an air of professional detachment that chilled me more than any open hostility. Her eyes, behind thin-rimmed glasses, seemed to bore into me, assessing, judging. "Alina," she began, her voice devoid of warmth, clipped and efficient, "I'm here for a routine assessment. Your children, Daniel and Jessica, expressed some concerns regarding your safety and well-being after your recent fall. They believe you might benefit from a more structured living environment. My heart hammered against my ribs, a furious drumbeat against my anger. My children, I repeated, incredulous, my voice rising slightly despite my best efforts to remain composed. They called you, without my knowledge or consent. This is an outrage. Brenda's eyes, cool and unblinking, met mine, unwavering. They are your legal next of kin, Alina, and they have a right to ensure your safety. This is a standard procedure when family members express concern for an elder's capacity to live independently. She proceeded to ask me a series of questions that felt invasive and demeaning about my ability to dress myself, prepare meals, manage medications, and handle my finances. I answered calmly, asserting my independence and detailing my daily routines, but I could feel her skepticism, a judgment already formed in her professional mind. It was clear she wasn't there to assess me, but to validate their predetermined narrative. So, Alina, she concluded, snapping her pen back into place with a definitive click, her gaze fixed on her clipboard rather than my face, based on my preliminary assessment and your children's concerns, I recommend a short-term stay at Sunnybrook Assisted Living. It's a highly reputable facility in the area, well-regarded, and it would allow for a more comprehensive evaluation of your needs. Just a temporary measure, of course, to ensure your safety and give your family peace of mind. Temporary, I almost scoffed, a dry, humorless sound escaping my lips. You mean until you and my children decide I'm safe enough to be locked away permanently? My voice was tight with suppressed anger, a raw edge of defiance. Brenda gave a thin, professional smile, her lips barely moving. Alina, we are simply looking out for your best interests. This is about ensuring you receive the care you need as you age. The care I need, I retorted, rising from my chair, a sudden jolt of defiant energy sparking through me. I stood tall, meeting her gaze directly. Or the care you and my children think I need? I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions. I am not a child and I am not incapacitated. My doctor said I was fine, only a bruise. This is coercion. She ignored my outburst, gathering her papers with deliberate slowness, making it clear my words held no weight. I'll be in touch with Daniel and Jessica regarding the next steps for your placement. They're very concerned about you, Alina. They just want what's best. With that, she left, her departure leaving behind a chilling silence that felt heavier than any argument. The air in my cottage felt thick with the residue of her judgment, the scent of fear now mingling with the familiar comfort of home. Later that evening, Daniel and Jessica arrived, their faces radiating a manufactured concern, a carefully rehearsed performance. Mom, how was your meeting with Brenda? She seemed lovely, didn't she? So thorough and professional, Jessica chirped, her voice too bright, too innocent. She was lovely if you enjoy being interrogated and judged in your own home by a stranger dispatched by your own children, I replied, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to her forced cheer. And why, pray tell, did you call her without even mentioning it to me, without my consent? Daniel sighed dramatically, running a hand through his hair, a practiced gesture of exasperation. Mom, we worried about you. After the fall, and with you being alone all the time, we want to be responsible. We just want to make sure you're safe, that you're looked after properly. Safe, I spat the word out, letting the venom of my anger finally seep into my tone. Or out of your way, out of your hair, so you can sell this house and get your hands on my money. Is that what this is about, Daniel? Is that the true meaning of your care? The accusation hung in the air, stark and unvarnished, a raw wound exposed. Jessica gasped, feigning shock, pressing a hand to her chest. Mom, how could you even think such a thing? We love you, this is for your good, we're simply trying to protect you. Her eyes welled up, a single, perfect tear tracing a path down her cheek. My good? I challenged, stepping closer to them, my voice rising in a crescendo of long-suppressed fury, the dam of my patience finally breaking. Is it for my good that you intercept my phone calls? Is it for my good that you dismiss my opinions? Is it for my good that you send social workers to my home without my consent? Is it for my good that you treat me like a mentally incapacitated child? This isn't care, Daniel. This isn't love, Jessica. This is control born of greed, and I will not be controlled. Not by you, not by anyone. Their faces, usually so composed, fractured for a moment, revealing a flash of panic, a flicker of their true, avaricious intentions. The shock of being confronted so directly, so vehemently, was evident. But they quickly recomposed themselves, slipping back into their roles of dutiful, concerned children with practiced ease. Mom, you're just upset, Daniel said, reaching for my arm, his voice now softer, more cajoling. Let's talk about this calmly, you're not thinking straight. But I recoiled from his touch, a visceral reaction of disgust. The mask had slipped, if only for a second, and I had seen the true face of their betrayal, ugly and undisguised. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a carefully orchestrated plan. And I knew then, with every fiber of my being, that I was not just fighting for my home, but for my very identity, my very right to exist as an independent human being. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. The air in my cottage grew heavy with unspoken resentment. The subtle manipulations of Daniel and Jessica intensified, transforming my beloved home into a battleground for my autonomy. The social worker, Brenda, became their silent accomplice, her weekly check-ins serving as thinly veiled inspections, her polite questions laced with thinly disguised judgment. She'd scrutinize my refrigerator, peer into my medicine cabinet, and even subtly test my memory with innocuous questions, all while maintaining a facade of professional concern that was utterly disingenuous. "Eleanor, are you sure you locked the back door last night? Your children mentioned you sometimes forget when you're preoccupied. Or, did you remember to take your vitamin D today? It's so important for bone health, especially after a fall, you know." My garden, once my refuge, my source of quiet joy and physical exercise, felt invaded. Daniel began hiring landscapers to manage it, despite my protests that I enjoyed the work, found solace in the soil, and was perfectly capable of tending my own roses. The pungent scent of chemical fertilizers replaced the earthy perfume of my blossoms, and the meticulously arranged rows of vegetables were replaced by tidy, but impersonal, flower beds designed for low maintenance, not personal connection. "Mom, we just want to take the burden off your shoulders," he'd insist, even as I watched my beloved garden transform into something sterile and unfamiliar, a reflection of their vision for my life. It was another subtle erasure of my presence, another step towards making my home no longer truly mine. The conversations with Daniel and Jessica became exhausting exercises in deflection, each one draining my energy and patience. Every attempt I made to assert my independence was met with patronizing smiles or exasperated sighs. "Mom, we know you think you can manage, but we've seen how much you struggle. The doctor even said so," Jessica would say, as if my words were just a childish fantasy, a delusion of an aging mind. Daniel would then chime in, his voice tinged with a feigned weariness. "Look, Mom, we just want to make sure you're safe. What if you fall again and we're not here? We'd never forgive ourselves. It's too much of a risk." Their worry felt less like genuine affection and more like a carefully crafted justification for their creeping control. One afternoon, I discovered a cold, gray lockbox installed on my refrigerator door, securely bolted to the side. My heart plummeted, a lead weight in my chest. Inside, my daily medications, neatly arranged, were now accessible only by a 4-digit code. A code which, of course, they had given to me, but the principle of the matter was maddening. "What is this, Daniel?" I demanded, pointing at the cold metal box, my voice tight with disbelief. "Why is this here? What gives you the right to do this?" He looked up from his phone, feigning surprise, his expression perfectly innocent. "Oh, that, Jessica and I thought it would be a good idea, just to keep track of your meds. You know, to make sure you take them on time and that you don't accidentally double dose. It's for your own good, Mom. No more forgetting doses, no more worries." He even offered a placating smile. "Forgetting doses?" I retorted, my voice trembling with suppressed rage but maintaining a dangerous calm. "I have never forgotten a single dose in my life. I am a meticulous person. This is an insult. You are treating me like a child, Daniel, like I'm incapable of managing my own basic needs, my own health, my own mind." He put on his most patient, long-suffering face, the one that usually made me feel guilty. "Mom, we just worry about you. We're doing this out of love, out of concern for your health." Love, I almost choked on the word, a bitter taste in my mouth. Is this love, stripping me of my dignity, locking away my medicine? Invading my privacy, controlling every aspect of my life? This is not love, Daniel, this is a betrayal. This is about power and control, and I will not stand for it. He just shrugged, dismissing my anger as irrational, a sign of my supposed decline, a common tactic to invalidate my emotions. Then came the final blow, meticulously disguised as a benevolent, thoughtful offer. Daniel and Jessica sat me down one evening, their faces unusually solemn, almost grave, as if delivering tragic news. Mom, Daniel began, his voice soft, almost tender, we've been talking and we've found the perfect place for you. We really think you'll be happy there. Jessica quickly interjected, her eyes wide with manufactured enthusiasm, a forced, unconvincing sparkle. It's called Harmony Haven. It's beautiful, Mom. It has a heated pool, a fully stocked library, even a little chapel for quiet reflection. And the rooms are lovely with a view of the park. It's exactly what you need, with all the services right there. Harmony Haven, I repeated, the name tasting like ash in my mouth, the words themselves a bitter pill. That's an assisted living facility, isn't it? Daniel nodded, a triumphant gleam in his eyes that he couldn't quite conceal. Yes, Mom, and we've already put down a deposit. You're set to move in next month on the 15th. All the arrangements are made. My breath hitched in my throat, a sharp, painful intake. A deposit, you put down a deposit. Without even asking me, without my consent, without even discussing it with me, your mother. The audacity, the sheer nerve of it was breathtaking. Jessica looked genuinely surprised, her carefully constructed facade momentarily cracking. Well, we thought it was obvious, Mom, after the fall and Brenda's assessment, and all the concerns we've had. It's the logical next step for your safety, for our peace of mind. We simply want you to be secure. My peace of mind? I shot back, my voice rising, a tremor of pure fury in my chest. What about my peace of mind? What about my desires? What about my right to choose where I live? I told you over and over I am not going to an assisted living facility. I am not an invalid. This is my home, my life. Daniel sighed dramatically, running a hand through his hair, as if I were the unreasonable child. Mom, you're being unreasonable. We've done everything we can to make this an easy transition for you. We've even started clearing out some of the clutter in your room. We'll handle everything, don't you worry your pretty little head. Clearing out the clutter, I felt a surge of cold dread, a premonition of violation. What clutter, what exactly have you touched in my room? He gestured vaguely towards my bedroom, avoiding my gaze. Just some old boxes, Mom, things you don't need anymore. Sentimental items that might be too much for your new space. We're trying to make the move easier for you. I stormed into my bedroom, my heart pounding with a sickening premonition. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat, a sharp, searing pain. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The antique chest of drawers, a family heirloom that had belonged to my grandmother, a piece of dark cherry wood that had graced my family for generations, was gone. My beloved collection of first edition novels, carefully curated over decades, each spine a portal to another world, were replaced by generic, mass-produced paperbacks. My framed photos, intimate memories of Arthur and our travels, vibrant snapshots of our life together, were tossed haphazardly into a single cardboard box labeled, in Daniel's neat, impersonal hand, Misk. They hadn't just packed. They had purged. They were erasing me, piece by piece, stripping my home of its soul, turning it into a sterile shell ready for sale, a monument to their avarice. Where is it? I whispered, my voice hoarse, barely audible over the ringing in my ears. Where is my chest, my books, my photographs? Daniel and Jessica followed me in, their faces now devoid of their earlier pretense, replaced by an unsettling blend of impatience and determination, their masks finally slipping. Mom, don't be dramatic. Those old things just take up space. We're modernizing. Everything you need is being carefully organized for your new room at Harmony Haven. It's a fresh start for you, less to worry about. This isn't my room, I choked out, tears finally blurring my vision, hot and stinging. This isn't my home, this is your betrayal. You are selling my life, aren't you? You're selling my memories, my history, for money, for your convenience. They didn't deny it. Their silence was a damning confession, more powerful than any shouted admission. I looked at their faces, once so dear, once so innocent, now alien and cold, hardened by greed. The illusion of their care shattered completely, revealing the raw, ugly truth beneath. This was not about my well-being, it was about their inheritance, their convenience, their desire to control. And in that moment, standing amidst the ruins of my plundered home, I knew I had to fight. Not just for my property, but for my very existence, for my right to be a Leaner Davies, whole and independent. The battle for my dignity had just begun, and I was prepared to fight to the bitter end. The night after their Harmony Haven announcement and the discovery of my pilfered belongings, sleep was a distant memory. I lay in my bed, the moonlight casting long, accusing shadows across the room, feeling like a ghost in my own home. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside seemed to mock my helplessness, my powerlessness. They had truly believed they had won. They thought they had cornered me, stripped me of my defenses, and left me with no choice but to comply, to quietly vanish into the sterile confines of an assisted living facility. But they were wrong. So terribly, fundamentally wrong. A cold, hard resolve began to crystallize within me, solidifying like ice. The searing anger that had surged through me, hot and blinding, slowly cooled into a steely, unwavering determination. I was not going to Harmony Haven. I was not going to surrender my home, my cherished memories, or my dignity to their avarice. They wanted to treat me like a frail, senile child. Fine. I would show them precisely what this child was capable of. They had underestimated me, and that would be their fatal mistake. My first thought was of a lawyer, but who? My existing attorney, old Mr. Henderson, was a family friend, someone who had handled Arthur's will and our relatively simple affairs. He was too close to Daniel and Jessica, too likely to be swayed by their carefully crafted narrative of my supposed decline. I needed someone impartial, someone fierce, someone who wouldn't be swayed by their charm or their fabricated stories. I remembered hearing about an elder advocacy group at the local library, a place where I used to volunteer for years, helping organize the Friends of the Library book sales. They offered legal advice, sometimes even pro bono, for seniors facing exploitation or abuse. It was a long shot, a desperate reach in the darkness, but it was a start, a glimmer of hope. The next morning, I feigned a sudden, almost childish, interest in a community outreach program at the library, knowing Jessica, in her self-appointed role as my chauffeur and gatekeeper, would want to drive me. "Oh, Mom, are you sure you're up to it? You're still a bit wobbly. Maybe I can just drop off the books for you. I could run that errand for you." But I insisted, putting on my most frail-sounding, slightly confused voice, playing their own game against them. "No, dear, I really need to get out, just for a bit. My doctor said fresh air and a change of scenery would do me good. It'll do me good, I'm sure." She relented, her concern about my fragility, or perhaps her need to maintain appearances, outweighing her need for total control for now. At the library, the familiar scent of old books and polished wood was a comforting balm. I slipped away from Jessica, who was busy chatting animatedly with one of the newer librarians about a new historical fiction release, and made my way to the information desk. "Excuse me," I whispered to the young woman behind the counter, a bright-eyed intern named Chloe whom I vaguely remembered from my volunteer days. "I'm looking for information on elder advocacy, the group that helps with legal issues. I think they have an office downtown." Her eyes widened slightly, and she immediately understood, a flicker of recognition passing between us. "Right this way, Mrs. Davies," she said, her voice commendably low, almost a murmur. She led me to a quiet corner, shielded from Jessica's potential view by a towering bookshelf of encyclopedias, and discreetly handed me a small, unassuming brochure with a phone number and an address printed in small, clear type. "Ask for Sarah Miller," she added with a knowing, almost conspiratorial wink. "She's the best." Back home, I carefully tucked the brochure deep within a forgotten knitting bag, nestled among skeins of untouched yarn. That night when Daniel and Jessica were out for their usual date night, a predictable pattern that now offered me precious windows of opportunity, I made the call. My hands trembled as I dialed, the ancient rotary phone feeling oddly heavy, but my voice, when I spoke, was surprisingly steady, imbued with a newfound resolve. "My name is Eleanor Davies," I said into the receiver, my voice clear and unwavering. "I believe I need some legal advice regarding my children." Sarah Miller, the lawyer on the other end, listened patiently, her voice calm and empathetic, yet with an undercurrent of steely professionalism. She didn't interrupt, allowing me to fully articulate the labyrinthine details of my predicament. I poured out my story, each word a release of long-suppressed pain and anger. The seemingly innocuous fall, their exaggerated concerns, the constant monitoring, the humiliating lockbox on my fridge, the casual theft of my cherished heirlooms, the forced move to Harmony Haven, the unannounced social worker. I recounted every detail, every insidious comment, every calculated manipulation, every tiny indignity. "They're trying to take my home, Sarah," I concluded, my voice breaking slightly despite my efforts to remain composed. "They're trying to take my entire life from me, piece by piece." Sarah's response was not one of shock, but of grim familiarity, tinged with a quiet compassion. "Eleanor, what you're describing is a classic, textbook case of elder financial and emotional abuse. It's unfortunately far more common than people realize, often perpetrated by those closest to the elder. She then laid out my options, calmly and clearly, cutting through the fog of my distress. First, we need to gather irrefutable evidence. Anything you have, texts, emails, notes you've taken, even just dates and times of their actions and specific quotes. Documentation is key. Second, we can send them a formal letter, a cease and desist, asserting your rights and demanding they stop interfering. Third, if necessary, we can file for a restraining order to prevent them from entering your home or interfering with your life without your explicit permission. And finally, if they persist, we can explore legal action to ensure your financial independence and prevent them from selling your property out from under you. Evidence, the word resonated with me, a powerful echo. I wasn't just a victim, I was a witness, a careful observer, and now an active participant in my own defense. Over the next few weeks, I transformed into a quiet spy in my own home. I started keeping a meticulous journal, a small, leather-bound book hidden beneath a loose floorboard in my closet, a place I knew they'd never think to look. Every morning, I would write down every instance of their control. The precise times Daniel questioned my spending, the specific dates Jessica intercepted my calls and feigned my unavailability, the exact words Brenda Peterson used during her invasive visits. I even started setting up discreet voice recordings on my phone during their visits, careful to hide it in my pocket or tucked beneath a cushion. Their confident, dismissive tones, their thinly veiled threats, their patronizing for your own good pronouncements, all were now being captured, undeniable proof of their insidious agenda, a chilling soundtrack to their betrayal. One particularly galling incident provided crucial, undeniable evidence. Jessica brought over a thick document she called a medical consent form, insisting I sign it immediately. It just allows us to speak to your doctors, Mom, in case of an emergency or to coordinate your appointments, she chirped, handing me a pen with an overly sweet smile. But something about her eagerness, her slightly averted gaze, her almost desperate need for me to sign without reading made me intensely suspicious. Later, when they were gone and the house was quiet, I carefully retrieved the form and read the fine print, my heart sinking with each line. It wasn't just a simple consent form. It was a broad power of attorney granting them full, irrevocable control over all my medical decisions, including the ability to consent to long-term care facilities and even end-of-life choices without my input. It was a blank check for my future handed to them. I didn't sign it. Instead, with trembling hands, I carefully photographed every page, front and back, ensuring every word was legible, and immediately sent the images to Sarah. Sarah was impressed, her voice tinged with a newfound respect when she called back. "Eleanor, this is excellent. This form alone is a clear, egregious attempt to strip you of your medical autonomy and decision-making rights. It strengthens our case considerably, providing undeniable proof of their intent." She then advised me to discreetly inform my bank that any attempts by Daniel or Jessica to access my accounts, obtain financial information, or make any transactions should be reported to me immediately and denied without my explicit, in-person consent. "They'll try to get power of attorney over your finances next, or try to sell your assets without your knowledge," she warned. "We need to cut them off at the pass, create an impenetrable barrier around your financial independence." My quiet rebellion was gaining momentum, a silent storm brewing. The fear that had initially paralyzed me was slowly replaced by a growing sense of empowerment, a surge of adrenaline. I was not alone. I had a plan, a formidable ally in Sarah, and a growing arsenal of undeniable facts. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of genuine hope, a certainty that I could fight back and win. Daniel and Jessica, blinded by their greed and their arrogant conviction that I was merely a senile old woman, too frail and confused to resist, had no idea the intricate, legal trap they were meticulously setting for themselves. I was gathering my ammunition, piece by painstaking piece, and soon I would be ready to fire. The weeks leading up to the supposed move-in date at Harmony Haven were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Daniel and Jessica ramped up their efforts, believing they were merely guiding a confused old woman towards her inevitable future, a future they had so meticulously planned for their own benefit. Little did they know, I was meticulously collecting evidence of their every misstep, every manipulative word, every subtle act of control. My hidden journal, tucked safely beneath the loose floorboard, grew thick with entries, each one a testament to their calculated cruelty and casual disregard for my autonomy. They began packing my belongings without my supervision, ostensibly to help lighten my load to make the move easier. I'd find cherished photo albums, once filled with Arthur's jaunty scrawl detailing our adventures, replaced with sterile, commercially produced albums, their contents jarringly out of order. My grandmother's antique quilt, a fragile tapestry of family history woven with love and care, vanished from its cedar chest, replaced by a generic, store-bought comforter. "Mom, we just packed the things you won't need right away to get a head start," Jessica would say, her smile too wide, too innocent, too practiced. "We're being so efficient. Harmony Haven's rooms are lovely, but they're a bit smaller, so we're just making sure you have what you need there." Her words implied a subtle threat. Too many personal items, too many memories, would just be an inconvenience in my new, constrained life. My calls to Sarah became more frequent, each conversation a lifeline, a surge of renewed determination. She instructed me on how to secure my financial documents, advising me to open a new, private safety deposit box at a different bank, one far from their usual branches, accessible only by me, with no power of attorney assigned to anyone. "They'll likely try to get control of your banking next, Alina," she warned, her voice calm but firm. "Make sure they can't access any statements, online or physical. Change your passwords, update your security questions." Under the pretense of running errands, an excuse Jessica would never deny as it meant I was out of her hair, I managed to set up the new box, transferring all my important papers, my remaining jewelry, and even a small emergency fund into it. It felt like burying treasure, a secret act of defiance that thrilled me to my core, a tangible representation of my hidden rebellion. Daniel, meanwhile, decided to involve my distant cousin, Robert, a man I barely knew, residing in a neighboring state, but who had a reputation for being financially shrewd and utterly ruthless in business. Robert arrived one afternoon, ostensibly for a friendly visit and a long overdue catch-up, but his questions quickly veered into the intrusive and inappropriate. "Alina, Daniel tells me you're considering a move to Harmony Haven. Smart decision. Property values around here are a little inflated right now, don't you think? Might be a good time to sell and liquidate some assets." He was clearly there to gauge my mental capacity and perhaps subtly push me towards a quick sale, acting as a third-party validator for their plans. I maintained a pleasant, vague demeanor, feigning slight confusion about complex financial matters, just enough to make him underestimate me, to see me as a harmless, slightly bewildered old woman. He left, seemingly satisfied, but I knew his visit was another brick in their carefully constructed wall of control. One evening, Daniel brought over a thick, imposing binder filled with what he called final arrangements for Harmony Haven. It was a weighty document detailing move-in dates, daily schedules, facility rules, and most ominously, payment plans. He wanted me to sign a series of forms, including the core financial agreement for the facility. "It's just standard paperwork, Mom," he said, pushing the binder across my dining table, a pen lying innocently beside it. "Nothing to worry about, just sign where I've marked it. We've already gone over it all." I took the pen, but instead of signing, I slowly and deliberately turned the pages, my eyes scanning every single word, even the tiny print at the bottom that most people would skip. Daniel grew visibly impatient, tapping his fingers on the table. "Mom, it's just a lot of legalese, it's all straightforward, just the usual terms and conditions." "Legalese is precisely why I need to read it, Daniel," I replied, my voice calm but firm, my gaze unwavering. "I'm a meticulous person, you know that. I like to understand what I'm putting my name to." My eyes scanned the clauses, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs, each beat a silent prayer for clarity. There it was, buried deep within a paragraph about resident responsibilities and asset management. A clause stating that by signing, I irrevocably granted Harmony Haven and its designated agents, and by extension, Daniel and Jessica, as my responsible parties, full authority to manage my assets to cover all costs, and crucially, a waiver of my right to legal counsel concerning the terms of the agreement. It was a trap meticulously designed to strip me of all my rights, to make me a captive with no recourse. "Ah, here it is," I said, my finger tracing the damning words. "This seems rather comprehensive, Daniel, this clause right here. It basically gives Harmony Haven and you too, by extension, free rein over my finances, doesn't it? And it says I can't even consult a lawyer about it before signing. Is that correct?" Daniel looked flustered, his composure finally beginning to crack. He stammered, his eyes darting away from mine. "No, Mom, it's just standard. All facilities have this. They just want to ensure payment. And the lawyer part is just to prevent frivolous lawsuits, to streamline the process." "Frivolous lawsuits?" I raised an eyebrow, my voice laced with ice. "Is that what you call a person protecting their life savings? Protecting their very future? Daniel, this isn't a contract, it's a surrender document, and I will not be signing it, not without my own lawyer reviewing every single word first." I pushed the thick binder back across the table, its weight feeling oppressive. His face hardened, losing all pretense of concern. "Mom, don't be difficult, this is the last step. We've gone through all this already, we're doing this for you, you have to sign it." His voice was now sharp, impatient, his true frustration finally bubbling to the surface. Jessica, who had been silently observing, a carefully neutral expression on her face, finally spoke up, her voice shrill with irritation. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. This is the best option for you. We've worked so hard on this. We've put down a deposit, we've cleared out your things." "Worked hard to imprison me, you mean?" I shot back, a quiet fire burning in my eyes, a fury that had been simmering for months now igniting into a blaze. "Worked hard to sell my home out from under me. Hard to steal my possessions, the very essence of my memories." Their faces went pale, a sudden stark realization dawning in their eyes. I had hit a nerve. I had stripped bare their carefully constructed deception. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Daniel stammered, trying to regain his composure, his voice suddenly weak. "The antique chest," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a razor. "My grandmother's quilt, my first edition novels, my photographs. Where are they, Daniel?" "Jessica, did you pack them away so efficiently that they simply vanished, or did you just sell them for a quick buck? Did you think I wouldn't notice?" They had no answer. Their usual excuses, their feigned innocence, evaporated like smoke. Their silence was damning, a confession more powerful than any shouted admission. I had called their bluff, exposed their avarice, their callous disregard for my feelings and my history. It was a small victory, but it was mine. I knew then that the battle was far from over, but I had shown them that I was not the frail, senile old woman they imagined. I was a leaner, and I was fighting back, armed with the truth and a newfound strength. The atmosphere in my cottage became palpably hostile after my refusal to sign the Harmony Haven documents and my direct accusations about my missing belongings. Daniel and Jessica stopped pretending. Their masks dropped entirely. Their saccharine smiles evaporated, replaced by cold glares and thinly veiled threats, their faces contorted with frustration and barely concealed anger. The constant, "for your own good" rhetoric shifted to outright accusations. "You're making this impossible, Mom. And you're being incredibly selfish, thinking only of yourself." They escalated their attempts to force my hand, to break my spirit. Jessica began to forget to pick up my groceries, leaving me to rely on my dwindling pantry and the kindness of my loyal neighbor, Margaret, who quietly left bags of fresh produce on my porch. She would then call, feigning apology. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry, work was just crazy, I'm so exhausted. Are you managing all right? Perhaps you should just go to Harmony Haven where everything is taken care of." Daniel started calling me multiple times a day, each call a barrage of intrusive questions about my well-being, my activities, and my supposed inability to cope. "Mom, are you sure you turned off the stove? You know how forgetful you can be these days." Or, "Did you remember your blood pressure medicine? I'm just worried you'll have another fall and we'd never know." It was a relentless psychological assault designed to break me, to wear down my resistance until I capitulated. One afternoon, I was watering my petunias when a locksmith's van pulled into my driveway, followed closely by Daniel's sedan. A burly man with a toolbox exited the van. "Eleanor Davies?" he asked, clipboard in hand. "I'm here to change the locks. Your son Daniel requested it, said you misplaced your keys and he wanted to ensure your safety." My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it, their ultimate move. They were trying to lock me out of my own home, to physically force me into Harmony Haven, to make my cottage a fortress against me. "I did not misplace my keys," I stated, my voice firm, projecting confidence I barely felt. "And I did not request new locks. You will not be changing anything on my property." I stood my ground, my posture as straight as my aching back would allow, meeting his gaze directly. The locksmith looked confused, then wary, sensing the underlying tension. He glanced at Daniel, who stood by his car, hands shoved in his pockets, a picture of feigned innocence. Ma'am, I have a signed work order here from Daniel Davies. He's listed as the property owner's son and has authorized this work. And I am the sole property owner with undisputed title, I replied, stepping forward, my voice gaining strength. And I explicitly forbid you from performing any work on my property. If you proceed, I will call the police and file charges for trespassing and attempted unlawful entry. He hesitated, sensing my unyielding resolve, then mumbled an apology to Daniel, packed up his tools, and to my immense relief, left. I immediately called Sarah, recounting the incident, my voice still trembling with adrenaline. "Excellent, Eleanor," she said, her voice calm and approving. "That's another clear instance of their attempt to control your property without your consent. We'll add it to the evidence, it proves intent." The next week, Sarah sent a formal cease and desist letter to Daniel and Jessica. It was a meticulously worded document, precise and utterly damning. It outlined their every attempt to manipulate my medical care, control my finances, restrict my social interactions, and usurp control of my property. It cited specific dates and instances, referencing my detailed journal entries. It demanded they cease all such actions immediately or face severe legal repercussions, including potential charges of elder abuse and fraud, a felony in our state. It also formally requested the immediate return of all my personal belongings that they had cleared out, listing the missing items in excruciating detail. The letter was a bombshell, a legal declaration of war. I received a furious phone call from Daniel moments after they received it. His voice was a raw blend of outrage and thinly veiled panic. "Mom, what is this? A cease and desist? Are you out of your mind? Who is this Sarah Miller person? Are you talking to lawyers? Are you seriously doing this? We're your children, we're just trying to help you to keep you safe." He sounded genuinely shocked, as if he couldn't comprehend my defiance. "I am perfectly within my mind, Daniel," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the triumph I felt. "And yes, I am talking to lawyers, because you left me no choice. You forced my hand with your relentless interference and blatant attempts to dispossess me. You tried to steal my life from me, piece by piece. And now, you will face the consequences of those actions." Jessica called soon after, her voice a mix of tears and accusations, high-pitched and hysterical. "Mom, how could you do this to us? After everything we've done for you, all our sacrifices, this is going to ruin us, our reputations, Daniel's job." "Ruin you?" I asked, my voice chillingly calm, a cold steel replacing my usual warmth. "What about ruining me? What about 7 decades of memories, of independence, of dignity that you tried to erase? What about the lies you told, the control you exerted, the fear you instilled? This is not about ruining you, Jessica. This is about justice. It's about reclaiming my life." The phone calls continued for days, alternating between furious anger, desperate pleas, and clumsy attempts at reconciliation. "Mom, let's just talk this out. No need for lawyers. We can resolve this as a family," Daniel would say, his voice now laced with a desperate edge, his usual bravado crumbling. "We are resolving this as a family," I would reply, my voice unwavering. "Through legal channels, because that is the path you chose when you decided to betray my trust and systematically undermine my autonomy. You made this a legal matter, not a family one." Sarah advised me to keep my distance, to let the legal letter do its work, to let their panic fester. "They're testing you, Eleanor," she explained, her voice firm. "They want to see if you'll back down. Don't. Every phone call, every text, every attempted visit, document it. It only strengthens our case." I spent my days meticulously documenting their attempts to contact me, their continued passive-aggressive actions, even their attempts to send unsolicited gifts. The evidence mounted, forming an unassailable mountain of proof. One afternoon, a certified letter arrived. It bore the return address of Daniel and Jessica's attorney, a prestigious downtown firm. It was a formal response to Sarah's letter, filled with denials and counter-accusations, painting me as an uncooperative and volatile elder who was misunderstanding her children's benevolent and loving intentions. But buried deep within the convoluted legal jargon, hidden like a buried treasure, was a single, telling sentence. "While our clients vehemently deny any wrongdoing, they are willing, for the sake of familial peace and Miss Davies' emotional well-being, to return certain sentimental items to Miss Davies at their earliest convenience." A small, triumphant smile touched my lips. They were admitting it, they had my belongings. It wasn't the full apology I wanted, not yet, but it was a crack in their carefully constructed facade of innocence. It meant they were worried, they were vulnerable. The next few weeks were a flurry of legal exchanges, a strategic chess match played through formal letters and phone calls between attorneys. Sarah was a formidable advocate, her every letter precise, unyielding, and utterly devastating. She filed a formal petition with the court, requesting an injunction to prevent Daniel and Jessica from interfering with my affairs and a formal accounting of all my property they had handled. She also discreetly hinted, in no uncertain terms, at seeking a permanent restraining order if their harassment continued, and even alluded to potential felony charges. The culmination came when Daniel and Jessica, along with their high-priced lawyer, Mr. Thompson, finally requested a mediation session. They wanted to settle to avoid a public court battle that would expose their shameful actions, their greed, and their blatant disregard for my rights. I agreed, but only on my terms. It would be held at Sarah's office, a neutral territory, and I would have full speaking rights, unedited and uncensored. The stage was set for the final confrontation, where I would finally speak my truth and reclaim my life, not just legally but morally. The mediation room felt sterile, cold, the air thick with unspoken animosity. Daniel and Jessica sat across from me, their faces grim, etched with a mixture of resentment and apprehension. They were flanked by their well-dressed, perpetually smirking attorney, Mr. Thompson, whose expensive suit seemed to mock my plain but dignified attire. Sarah sat beside me, a quiet pillar of strength, her presence a silent promise of unwavering support. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a lifetime of grievances simmering beneath a veneer of forced civility, ready to boil over. Mr. Thompson began, his voice smooth and overly conciliatory, a practiced drone. "Eleanor, Daniel and Jessica are here today because they love you very much and want to resolve this amicably. They understand there have been some misunderstandings, but their intentions have always been for your well-being, for your safety, as a loving family should provide." He spoke directly to me, but his eyes constantly flickered to Sarah, gauging her reaction. I fixed my gaze on Daniel, then Jessica, allowing my eyes to convey the depth of my disappointment and anger. "Misunderstandings?" I asked, my voice calm but firm, cutting through Mr. Thompson's practiced rhetoric. "Is that what you call trying to commit me to a facility against my will, despite my clear objections and my doctor's assessment? Is that what you call locking away my medication, treating me like a child? Is that what you call systematically seizing my finances, controlling my spending, screening my calls? Is that what you call having my valuable and irreplaceable belongings, my grandmother's quilt, my husband's war medals, my cherished photo albums, disappear from my home without my consent?" Jessica flinched visibly, her eyes darting away, unable to meet my gaze. Daniel mumbled, his voice barely audible, "Mom, we explained. We just thought those items were, well, they were old. We were just clearing out." "Unnecessary clutter," I finished for him, a bitter, humorless smile touching my lips. "Or valuable assets you intended to sell for your own gain. Let's be honest, Daniel. You saw my fall not as a personal crisis for me, but as a financial opportunity for yourselves. An opportunity to finally get your hands on my house, my savings, my life, without having to wait for my natural passing." My words were precise, cutting, exposing the raw truth of their avarice. Mr. Thompson quickly interjected, attempting to steer the conversation back to his terms. "Eleanor, let's focus on a path forward. Daniel and Jessica are prepared to offer you extensive assistance with daily living expenses, household maintenance, and transportation, should you require it. They simply want to ensure your comfort and safety in your home and alleviate any burdens on you." "Assistance?" I scoffed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "You mean continue to control my life under the guise of help?" "No, thank you. I am not a child and I am not a burden. My comfort and safety are my own responsibility, and I am perfectly capable of managing them, as I have for over 7 decades. Your assistance comes at too high a price." Then Sarah leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension with the sharp precision of a surgical blade. She held a thick file, its contents a testament to my tireless documentation. "My client, Eleanor Davies, is here today seeking a formal, legally binding recognition of her absolute autonomy and independence. This includes the immediate, unconditional return of all her personal belongings, an agreement that Daniel and Jessica will cease all unauthorized interference in her medical care, her finances, and her social life. This agreement will also include a complete cessation of any attempts to sell her property or arrange for her placement in any facility without her explicit, written consent. Furthermore, Miss Davies is requesting a permanent restraining order to prevent any unauthorized entry into her home by Daniel or Jessica or any agents acting on their behalf, and to strictly limit any future contact to mutually agreed-upon terms, initiated by Miss Davies herself. Daniel and Jessica gasped simultaneously, their faces paling dramatically. "A restraining order," Jessica cried, her voice rising to a shriek, her carefully constructed composure utterly shattered. "Mom, how could you? We're your children. This is an outrage. You stopped being my children the moment you started treating me like property," I stated, my voice unwavering, a profound calm settling over me. "You stripped me of my agency, my dignity, and my right to live my life as I choose. This isn't about love, Jessica, it's about control, and I will no longer tolerate it. This is the consequence of your actions." The mediation continued for hours, a grueling, emotionally draining exchange of demands and reluctant concessions. Daniel and Jessica's lawyer fought hard, attempting to discredit my claims, to paint me as an irrational, spiteful elder. But Sarah was a formidable advocate, her every statement precise and unyielding. She calmly and methodically presented each piece of evidence: my detailed journal entries, the recorded conversations where Daniel and Jessica made their controlling pronouncements, the photographic evidence of the medical consent form that would have given them absolute power over my health. She demonstrated their consistent pattern of manipulative behavior, their clear intent to usurp my life. Finally, worn down by the undeniable truth of the evidence, exhausted by the relentless pressure, and terrified by the public exposure and potential felony charges looming over them, Daniel and Jessica conceded. Their faces were a mask of defeat. They agreed to return all my belongings within 48 hours, sign a formal, legally binding agreement acknowledging my full autonomy and independent decision-making, and commit to no longer interfering with my finances, my medical care, or my social life. They also begrudgingly accepted the permanent restraining order, which meant they could not enter my property without my explicit written permission, nor could they contact me unless I initiated it, and even then, only on terms I dictated. It wasn't a complete estrangement, but it set clear, unbreachable boundaries that protected me. The moment the agreement was signed, a profound sense of relief, pure and exhilarating, washed over me. It wasn't triumph, not exactly, for there was a deep sadness in what had transpired. But it was something deeper, more elemental, the quiet satisfaction of having reclaimed what was rightfully mine. I had stared down their betrayal, refused to be silenced, and emerged intact, stronger than I had ever been. The next day, precisely 48 hours after the mediation, a small moving truck, distinctively not a professional company but a rental, pulled up to my cottage. Daniel and Jessica, their faces drawn and pale, supervised by Mr. Thompson and a neutral third party appointed by the court, began to unload my belongings. I watched from my porch swing, a quiet observer, a witness to their humiliation. My grandmother's quilt, though slightly creased, was returned to its cedar chest. My first edition novels, carefully wrapped, were placed back on my shelves, their familiar titles a comfort. My framed photographs, albeit slightly disheveled, were handed back to me, each one a precious fragment of my past. Each item was a small victory, a piece of my life, my history, returned. As they finished, Daniel lingered, his gaze meeting mine across the expanse of the lawn. There was no apology, no heartfelt remorse, just a flicker of shame and perhaps a hint of grudging respect for my unexpected defiance. "Mom," he mumbled, his voice barely audible, I hope we can move past this someday. I'm sorry it came to this." I looked at him, my expression unreadable, my heart a complex mixture of pain and resolve. "That, Daniel," I said, my voice soft but firm, carrying across the distance, "will be entirely up to you, and entirely on my terms." They left, their vehicle disappearing down the tree-lined street, and for the first time in months, my cottage felt truly empty of their oppressive presence. The air was lighter, cleaner, imbued with the scent of fresh freedom. I walked through each room, touching my returned possessions, feeling the weight of my reclaimed life settling back into place. My garden, though still bearing the scars of their landscaping, felt like my own again, beckoning me back to its quiet solace. The weeks that followed were a period of quiet healing, of rebuilding my shattered sense of security. I re-established my bridge game, receiving warm embraces and concerned questions from Betty and the other ladies, to whom I simply said, "Things are much better now. I'm back in charge of my own life." I resumed my volunteering at the library, finding solace in the familiar rhythm of books and quiet conversations with Chloe and the other staff. I even started tending my garden again, planting new roses in vibrant hues, a living symbol of growth and renewal, a defiant bloom against the winter of my past. My life wasn't just safe. It was truly mine again, every decision, every moment, a reflection of my own choosing. I often thought about Daniel and Jessica. The silence from them was profound, a testament to the ironclad boundaries I had established. It was a painful silence, yes, but one I had chosen for my own peace, for my very survival. I had faced their betrayal, asserted my will, and forged a new path. The journey had been arduous, fraught with fear and anger, but I had emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor, a woman who had fought for her right to live life on her own terms, fiercely independent until her last breath. The sun rose each morning, casting golden light through my cottage windows, illuminating not just my beloved home, but the dawn of my true, hard-won freedom.